Mm-hmm. Oh, he's not quite the ruthless efficiency driver he made himself sound at the top of the call.
Depends on the situation.
What's the plan, Tessie? Welcome back.
Cyberspace.
Empirical Trainers. Do you know what I mean? So they're like Empirical Trainers.
Hello, welcome back to the Cyberspace podcast by Empirical Training. I'm joined by the Empirical Trainers. So my name is Josh. I'm a cybersecurity product strategist, former SOC analyst, threat hunter, and the like. Joined by my former colleagues. We all met in that same security operations center, almost 10 years ago now, who've now gone on to have fruitful careers in different areas of cybersecurity. So normally I blow a lot of air up their backsides to kind of big them up, but I'm going to let them do it. And then if they don't do it justice, I might chime in with some of their credentials. So, Vaughan, do you want to kick us off? Say hello.
Hello, everyone. Hope you are doing well. Vaughan here, SOC leader, mentor, and efficiency driver for a AI cybersecurity startup.
Efficiency driver. Is that an official title?
So like me as the bus
is.
driver, or?
I like to think so. We've done lots of conversations in work today about efficiency, and I'm like, yeah, you guys aren't doing this well enough. You need to change up.
Nice. An all-round hard ass to make sure. And Andrew, AJ, how you doing?
I'm doing great. It's good to be back on the podcast, actually. So I'm AJ, Andrew Jones. Maybe you've seen me on YouTube, Instagram, on Empirical Training, but that's not where I started. I actually started as a SOC analyst, and now I'm an incident response consultant. I don't like to say specialist because just in case an incident arises and I don't do very well in it, but luckily these days that doesn't happen too often. So that's my intro. Hello, boys.
Yeah, fair play. Andy does not like bigging himself up, but he is the cool and calm head, the incident respond lead when it does hit the fan. And companies he works for, which I am not allowed to mention, value him hugely because of that, because he works for some important ones. So yeah, thank you, AJ. Always appreciate your expertise on the incident response stuff. And cheers, Vaughan, security leader, mentor, and efficiency driver. That's not going to go away now.
Fucking right.
Great. So we have the fourth member of the podcast, I guess, today. As usual, we're joined by our chat. We like to do this live. So we have a cybersecurity community where we help people get into cybersecurity roles or just talk and share information about cybersecurity. Finding that support network or community is really important in a team sport like cybersecurity, and particularly where you spend a lot of your days sitting there with flames all around you thinking everything is fine, which I think is the topic we're going to get on to second. But first of all, we have a question from one of our chats. So Mark has asked that he comes from a background of physical security risk management. So physical security, it's weird that we have to differentiate what that is now, but that is walls and doors and kinetic security almost. And then he wants to look to get into cyber and was wondering if we had a steer on what areas of cybersecurity there would be good overlap. So how can he harness his existing experience and transfer those skills over to the security role? So thank you very much, Mark. That's a superb question. And who wants to talk? Do you want to talk about physical security first, or do you want to get going with this, boys?
One thing I would want to touch on first is a certification that comes to mind is the ISC Squared certification. Their fundamental certification has some cybersecurity topics in there, but it also has some physical security-based topics. Making that as your start point, you probably have 50% of the knowledge to pass that one. And then it's just the parts of the cyber stuff to learn. So that might be a really nice way to get a nice shiny certification nice and early.
Yeah, and it's definitely relevant security, and there's one point out there. There's an official cert that kind of ties it together too. So physical security is stopping bad people getting in, and every cybersecurity organization also still has to have physical security, because if you don't, someone can stroll right in and drop a USB stick, and all the precautions that AJ has done in his incident response team and his blue team preparations of hardening and mitigating are bypassed in an instant. If the security guard sleeping on a desk and lets anyone through. So there is a huge connection between these two things, and the principles are the same. Obviously, you need to get that IT fundamental background and the cybersecurity concepts, because computers don't act the same as people, but people are behind the computers trying to break in. So I think you'll find that you'll have a lot of parallels with your psychology as well, that you have of what the attitude you take and this methodical way you go about things. But AJ, I know you worked for an organization where you had in the same building as physical security people, right? And we can mention this one was physical security was for a bank, right?
Yeah, so when I used to work in the security operations center for a bank, and a lot of the teams that I've worked in recently, we've been the senior cybersecurity analyst in incident response, but we've also had a corporate security team who work in kind of physical security, and a lot of it was usually kind of the lower level physical security analysts would be monitoring the local cameras, watching people going in and out of buildings. If an incident did arise, then they would be the ones working with the police on the kind of physical security side. But then there was also kind of more of the higher level who were more of kind of the VIP bodyguards for kind of the CEOs and things like that. So the physical security would always work with them. But then we would also work together. So if we knew that a CEO was going to a certain part of the world, we might be reviewing our threat intelligence to understand if there's a chance of maybe an ongoing cyber attack there. But then the physical security team would try and figure out not just if there's a chance that anything could happen. Well, it is a chance if anything could happen to that CEO, but it could be things such as hurricanes, tornadoes, bad weather, but also maybe riots and things like that. So we'd always work hand in hand, and all the roles that I've worked in recently, physical security and the best SOCs that I've worked in anyway, I've had physical security and the cybersecurity teams working quite closely together.
That's really cool, because that's not an experience I've had working on a managed security provider who provides just cybersecurity. Don't really see that connection with the physical security. But then you once said you had an incident. I think I was with you, and you were doing it. Maybe we were working remote somewhere, and then you're like, "Oh, it's not me. Somebody's ripped a cash machine out the wall." And nothing I can do.
Yeah, that was I think I was working in. Was I working a night shift? I think I was working a night shift then, and I told you the day after.
Yeah,
But this guy had turned up with a telehandler, and he just driven into whatever supermarket it was, and he just driven the telehandler into the supermarket, lifted the ATM out, and driven away with it. And yeah, there's not many cybersecurity protocols or security measures that you can put in place for that. So the physical security guys had to deal with that incident. But I thought it was quite a good one, because we had to jump on the call anyway to kind of manage it together. But again, there was nothing that we could do. They'd ripped it out of the wall and disconnected from the internet. So we kind of lost jurisdiction there. But yeah, that was a really good one. That was.
Yeah, nice. And so there's a lot of parallels, and what comes to mind as well is how many former military people get into cybersecurity. There's one, because there's funding for people that to transition to, but also because they have the type of mindset that you want. You're, as a physical security guy, are going to have that similar mindset of what protocol do I follow, what steps, where could this introduce risk, and how do I address the risk at each step. So you'll be very surprised, I think, once you get down the cybersecurity journey and start to learn the fundamentals, how many things you'll be able to transfer directly across. And hiring managers, Vaughan, if you were hiring someone with physical security, you'd probably see more transferable skills than they might even do themselves, right, in that first interview. And also comes to mind, do you want to come in there? Do you want me to waffle on? The Lockheed Martin kill chain. So there's that comes from a physical security concept, right? Which is, some people say it's a bit too basic these days. I still think it's great at being combined with more complex frameworks. Like for you, like the MITRE framework quite a lot. It's probably the top one. But the kill chain boils it down to fundamentals, and it starts off into how a way of attack sequences in warfare, and it applies the exact same principles to cybersecurity. So the categories are reconnaissance, weaponization, delivery, exploitation, installation, command and control, and then actions on objectives. And so those are the steps you need to get through in order to work out what's going on, how you basically compromise it initially, gain the entry vector, and then move down to whatever your goal might well be, which, if it's ransomware, that might take you quite a bit of time rather than a one and done. So how does...
That was well recited, Josh. How long did it take you to remember that?
I've talked about that one a few times. I actually have a Trojan horse metaphor I can pull out if you want me to go into it. But yeah, there's a physical security concept that was applied to cyber security. So check that one out. Actually, maybe that's a good way to a good place to start for you. Okay. Any other thoughts on Mark's question? Mark, any more questions you might have for us on that? Let us know in the chat. We'll get to them, but hopefully we've given you enough to start. Vaughn's given you an actual cert to start with. AJ's given you real examples of how that could work in the cybersecurity world and the crossover. And I've given you a nice little story about Lockheed Martin cyber kill chain. So hopefully there's something to get you going. And yeah, we also have my background was in law, Mark. So that was a transferable skill. I had to kind of justify why it works the same. And actually, you'll find that people like the diversity of analysis that you have in your background. They don't want people who can just, all done the exact same certs and know the exact same knowledge. They want people with different experiences, different backgrounds. So we're going to approach problems differently, because the more diverse your analysis is and the diverse your team is, the more effective you are, basically, because attackers constantly evolving and changing. It's not like there's not a linear path that they follow, so you need that diversity every day.
Cyberspace.
Empirical Trainers.
Somebody before we started this shared an interesting concept called Price's Law. So let's 1 second. I'll ask you what that is. Vaughn. People might already know what it is, but it's cybersecurity. We live in an industry where there aren't enough skilled professionals to do the job. The attackers always have the advantage. When they fail, they don't actually fail. They just get to try again, but with a bit more information in their back pocket and probably a higher chance of being successful. So it's a real difficult job in some respects. It's a lot of work. It can be high pressure. Analyst burnout is a real thing. People move jobs quickly or even abandon the profession altogether if they work for a really poor team that puts too much pressure on them. Someone in our community has had their boss quit this week and is now doing a lot of their work. And so he shared this concept of Price's Law, which I've never heard. But who wants to explain what Price's Law is? And then
I'm reading the comment here of them describing it. So it's the square root of the total members in the team do 50% of the work. So in theory, if you had 10 members, or 10 team members, you would assume each person would do 10% of the work. But in actuality, that's not the case. And actually, the square root of 10, whatever that works out as, that number of people do 50% of the work. So they're doing the majority.
And when I've never heard that until today, but actually that resonates hard. I think that really does, particularly in a team sport like cybersecurity. You need to have a lot of heads available, because you don't always know the volumes of work you might be doing, right? If it's 10 incidents all at once, AJ can't do 10. He needs support there. He needs assistance to be effective. So in some cases, you might be overstaffed for a little periods, but it always does go crazy. And when it goes crazy, the workhorses tend to step up, and some people hide. I think that's the experience I've had.
Yeah, I think an important distinction with it as well is obviously look after yourself and avoid burnout. But if you can be inside that square root of the total number that does a lot of the work, as long as you understand your value, that can do absolutely massive things for your own career, because you will get acknowledged as one of those people that do step up and do a lot of the critical tasks.
That's a hell of a point. It isn't unnoticed. These who is carrying the team on their back, so to speak. AJ, I remember when we used to work together, you were the king of tickets. Our stock director loved it when you were put on the support tickets, because you did 10x anyone else could do.
Yeah, that actually came down to just wanting to close them out, and I think a lot of people prefer to put them into pending and wait for the customer to potentially reply, even though if you solve the ticket, the customer can reply within 7 days. So I knew that, so I thought, well, if they're going to reply, it's going to reopen anyway. So that was slightly a confidence thing. Like, everybody could have done that, to be honest, but I just like seeing the number go down. And if the number goes down because you can solve the tickets and they're going to reply, then that for me is all well and good. But I have been in other jobs where, because a lot when you're managing tickets in the SIEM, especially or in the ticketing queue, sometimes you will get the workhorses who will just start to pick up all the tickets. And when I was working in the bank, it did become a thing, because some of the analysts, they didn't really care, because they could have picked up the tickets, but they were kind of dodging them a little bit. So we came up with a case manager. So they would come on the shifts and they would allocate the tickets out to the people, because at the end of the day, if there is people who are picking up tickets and who are the workhorses, they're probably going to get burnt out if they think that they need, because some people are just like that. They will just continue to pick up the work.
Lazy. Oh, sorry, no, the opposite.
There is
Some
two.
people are
Yeah,
lazy.
there's two sides. You get people who will just pick up the work, and then you will get people who will just kind of just leave it, go to
Float.
one side, and just float to the side. So the idea of that, to have the case manager, was to push those other people as well, because at the end of the day, you don't want. Usually, I've seen that your best analysts are the one that are picking up all the tickets, even the crap ones. They're just happy to be there, working, but then they can sometimes get burnt out. But then again, sometimes the really good people also don't get burnt out that quick. So it is a difficult one. But the case manager that we brought in, that was a great idea. We all took it in turns to be case manager and hand out cases to people that are on shift. So
that's a great segue, AJ, because funny enough, I was actually having a conversation in my team today about the idea of a case manager. So I've recently brought in a senior SOC analyst into my team, and we was talking about, I can't remember how we got onto the topic, but we was talking about, that's what it was, SLAs. So we was talking about how long a ticket should sit there before being acknowledged and worked. And I mentioned about at our first place, I'm sure you guys remember, there was a 15-minute SLA from when you had to acknowledge and triage the ticket and either send it off to a customer and close. And from speaking to my team about that, they thought, oh my God, 15 minutes, that's like crazy. How did you do it in 15 minutes? But it was hard, of course, as you guys know, but speaking to them and on their experiences, based on like high, mediums and lows, sometimes they had up to 8 hours to finish a ticket. And I was thinking, how can you be kind of waiting that long? And did analysts maybe get a little bit lazy and not do that sort of stuff? And yeah, that brought us onto the topic, AJ, of the case manager. And speaking about, are case managers good? You know, what's their benefits? What's their drawbacks? How does that allow for growth across the team? And one of the points I put forward was case managers can be great for efficiency, but in terms of having your team grow and learn how to manage their own time and be exposed to different elements, maybe a case manager isn't right for certain teams, depending on the type of team you're working for, because there's a lot of personal growth in being able to manage your time, which case managers might step on, but then they obviously drive, like I said about efficiency earlier, they drive a lot of efficiency in a SOC because they're making sure stuff gets done, which can be top of the list for certain companies.
It's like you brought that the 15 minutes we used to work, and for the instant triage, you know, that was definitely a terrifying thing to start with initially. You know, you get practiced, and it was kind of, you start with the easy alerts to get them done, and you do lots of training and research or shadowing before you were let loose on doing anything. But I wonder if that 15-minute also made us better analysts, right? Because you kind of had to act quickly, and you had
part
to.
of me thinks that, yeah. When I'm working now, that I work at quite a rapid pace still, and it's from that. Because I remember when I started in the second job after that, and I was working at a rapid pace, and the manager,
slow down, you're making us look terrible.
No, the manager was asked one of the team leads to check through all my cases to make sure that, because it looked like maybe I was just closing them out, but then he was like, no, actually he's doing them correct, he's just doing them quite quick. So a lot of that, and that did help to how I'm managing incidents now. I'm like super forward with it, like it's got to be done now, especially especially in an incident. It has to be done as quickly as you can, but obviously in an efficient way as well. And I do hold my hand up to where we were working, that did definitely contribute to that.
Yeah, I 100% believe that has made or bred better analysts, because like a common saying is pressure is a privilege. Like having that time constraint breeds efficiency and all of these positive qualities. Of course, it breeds a lot of stress as well. But if you can, I seen one of our community members posted about burnout and resiliency. If you can take that 15 minutes as a challenge and be resilient for it and try to grow in that scenario, you're going to come out of that situation a much better analyst. Just to what you're saying, AJ, about being able to bash through incidents efficiently and triaging them correctly as well is going to do massive amounts for your career.
That I can't imagine if I had 8 hours, like the paralysis analysis, is that the way you say it? Analysis paralysis would be pretty heavy, because sometimes you got to kind of pick an avenue to go down. That would be quite tricky. If I had 8 hours.
I think it's the key. One thing that we did clarify when I was talking to this about my team is, at our company, we did have dedicated analysts on different sections. So like 2 analysts would be dedicated to solely working incidents. 2 analysts would be dedicated to like responding to customer queries. And then like 2 analysts or whatever it was would be dedicated to tuning and threat hunting. Whereas in a lot of SOCs nowadays, and a lot of people I speak to on interviews, they don't really have dedicated roles. It's kind of analysts do everything. So again, that leads into time management and all these types of things, because having that 8 hours is a bit of a buffer, I guess, for allowing them to perform some of these activities in tandem.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you have another question as well that kind of asks about how do you block out bias in a case manager, but also from what you just mentioned there about the different responsibilities, how do you make sure you address bias or maybe just preference on who does what responsibility? Because Vaughan is a leader, you might be like, you know what, I want this analyst to be doing threat hunts because I know he's superb at it, and that makes my life easier. But you know, is that at the expense of somebody's development or or a gem you might not realize that you actually have? So how do you, I guess that's what the case is. How do you block out your bias, or how do you make sure everyone gets a fair shot while also realizing that, you know, it's not always fair in war?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we're doing, cyber war to a degree.
I think for me personally, I have quite a strong moral compass on personal growth. One reason why I've landed at my company I work at currently is because they also have that value. So for me, it's a very easy conversation that, you know, we are going to lose a bit of efficiency in the name of personal growth and personal development. So it's really nice that our values line up in that way, but absolutely they can be biased. You know, certain analysts are better at certain duties, but yeah, in the name of personal growth, everyone does need to get to that stage, or at least be given the opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Oh, he's not quite the ruthless efficiency driver he made himself sound at the top of the call.
Depends on the situation.
Yeah, but no, that's a good discussion. Really discussion. I think, you know, that the reality is that people are always going to be doing extra work, and I've never seen it formalized in a law like Price's law, but it resonates with all of our experience, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because you're never going to find, you're always going to have people who are having good days or bad days as well, or there's people who are better or worse, or people who care more as well. I think that's, some people just here to collect the paycheck, some people caring, like AJ, you talking about the closing the tickets, you cared about closing every one because you wanted to get them done and get them moving along. There are also people who care about making their metrics look good. So how do we kind of measure, if you're measuring effort, metrics, eh? I know we all want to hear what Vaughan has to say about metrics as a man who measures everything really efficiently in order to find those extra efficiencies, you know, the efficiency driver himself. And AJ, the man who is a walking metric, that man, whenever I work with him, has been the top of every metric that they ever recorded, an absolute golden boy. So getting their insights into that is going to be really interesting, but you're going to have to wait until next week to hear about that one. So thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you to Vaughan and AJ, as usual, for stepping up and helping our community, but also helping me understand things about cybersecurity, and hopefully having a discussion that helped you wherever you are in your cybersecurity journey. We are wrapping it up for today. If you do want to find more about us, you know, to find us on YouTube, Spotify, the Empirical Training Cyberspace podcast is everywhere you'd expect it to be. Follow us, say hello, add a comment. And if you really want to get involved, if you want to be part of that live studio audience that we have, you know, be part of the chat, get your questions answered. You know, we answer a lot of them on stream, and some of them we answer off stream as well when it gets really into the kind of specific or nitty gritty. You can find us at www.school.com/cybersec. And if you are interested from there as well, you can also navigate to our Gold platform if you need that mentorship, that guidance and assistance to give you a pathway within 8 weeks from, you know, having a foundational knowledge in IT. Maybe you work in tech or IT already, to get you all the pieces you need in order to be an effective cybersecurity SOC analyst and get that first role. And, you know, really, the sky's the limit from there. That's certainly what we found in our experience. So thank you very much for listening. My name's Josh. I've been the host of the Cyberspace podcast. And until next week, that's a wrap.
That's a wrap.